But let's go ahead and let's start with Man of Steel, which for sure is the birth of Christ, right? Or the birth of Superman.
Yeah.
Now, I will say this. Man of Steel, and I wonder if, well, I guess at first I wondered, is the fact that the very story, the gospel story being depicted in this movie alone, is it the fact that, well, there wasn't a guarantee of a follow-up film? You know what I mean? Like it was dependent, like the follow-up film was dependent on whether or not Man of Steel was going to be well received or not. I imagine. You know what I'm saying? I imagine. I'm not so sure if I'm right on that. I just imagine that might be the case. And I say that though because, again, when you actually look at the story arc of Man of Steel from beginning to end, it really does kind of, in a way, shape the very, gospel story alone in that movie.
Yeah.
But again, fast forward, then when you get this whole arc, it's like, well, it's kind of actually spread out. Yeah, I could see that. We'll get to that. But I could see that. Now, let's start with like Krypton, right? The way the movie starts. You got Jor-El, you got Lara, Superman, baby Superman being born, right? First natural birth in centuries, whatever, of how but you got centuries, whatever, of a birth, birth of a child naturally, which is funny though, because the exact opposite is true of Christ, right?
Yeah.
His birth is the unnatural birth in our lifetime, up until now, even, but even like when you consider from Adam and Eve, well, other than Adam and Eve, actually, right? So let's talk about that. The beginning of Zach's gospel, of his, Bible via DC.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? It's giving life, right? And in the again, like in a natural form, but the opposite of that is, and again, in the beginning of the Bible, Adam and Eve aren't naturally birthed. They have no parents other than God himself, right? So that's an interesting dynamic there. Again, fast forward though, same thing with Christ, right? He's birthed through Mary, but through the power of the Holy Spirit, right? Like, so it's kind of
but if you think about it, the whole him being that natural birth in like God so many years, and they touch on how they do make the babies,
right.
Not, which is like how you're just saying, like it's linear to that almost about the Adam and Eve, being Jor-El and Laura, and then having that natural, he almost like smushed all those stories together.
Yeah, like yeah, no, for sure. Well, and it gets more interesting, right? Because the more I kept watching, right? Like the more I keep watching this film, the more I'm realizing like just how crazy the symbolisms, the parallels really are, right? So obviously you got Jor-El, and I said this with Sil last time we talked about when we got together for Father's Day, right? And I was kind of just pointing out the significance of the fathers throughout the, Man of Steel, BVS, and Zack Snyder's trilogy story arc, right?
Yeah.
But what I found interesting is that in Man of Steel, you have Kal-El, who has two fathers, right? You have Jonathan Kent, who's his father on Earth, which would be Joseph, and then you have Jor-El, who's his heavenly father, right?
Yeah,
God, God the Father, Jesus the Son, right? So it's crazy how in Man of Steel there's already two fathers, right? There's the heavenly Father, the from up above, the Father from up above, and I mean, hey, hold on, brother. We speaking on Good Friday.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
Penny, just lay off, brother. Lay off. It's Good Friday, dog. It's Good Friday, dog. Oh man,
But I mean, but hey, that's
he ain't
exactly what
wrong.
they did.
He ain't
100%.
wrong.
100%. Which was the way it was intended to be. Let's keep that a book.
Yeah,
Oh, dang.
yeah.
That's a whole nother rabbit hole. But anyway, Jor-El represents the Heavenly Father, right? Sending Clark, sending his son to Earth, right, to essentially save him, right? And you know that's already the case because in that beginning dialogue between him and Laura, right, Jor-El and Laura, obviously she has doubts, she's concerned, he'll be a freak, he'll be an outcast, and his sentiments is no, they'll worship him, he'll be a god to them, which is exactly essentially what he becomes, right? In a way, actually in the way, right? In the way that matters. But you get into that more later. Again, it's funny. You get tidbits of all this in Man of Steel, but it really flushes out more in BVS, right? But we'll get there. And obviously, if you have anything to add, Carlos, by all means, you can add as well.
I got you. I'm taking it in. I'm taking it in right now.
Okay, bet.
I'm agreeing with it, man.
Okay, bet. Now, what's amazing about this, right? About that Krypton scene, right? And what it essentially embodies. And there's actually something about how this movie starts and actually every movie that follows starts that actually says something as well. But I'm not going to share that till the last movie. But now what I feel Krypton represents, right, is Krypton and again, even the Codex, that's another factor here. The Codex that's within Christ, right? So what's amazing about this, right, is obviously Krypton is about to die, right? And there's that they're obviously politicking about it, whatever, like what's the future of Krypton, what are we going to do, blah, 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 right? Now, Zod comes in, right? Now, what I like about what Zod represents in this film is he is the fallen angel Lucifer in this film, right? Yes. He goes to war in the heavens and he takes down a third of the angels with him, which is exactly what you see, the war engaging in Krypton, the war in the heavens, right? Kryptonians that side with him, the angels that side with Lucifer. Well, there's the other, the angels or the other Kryptonians that side with Krypton or side with God, whatever the case may be, right?
Yep.
Right. And the question is what are they warring about? Okay. What are they warring about? Now, in hindsight, right, like it's not the destruction of Krypton, it's the future of Krypton, right? Or the future biblically is what God intends, right?
Yeah.
Lucifer, for anybody who's up to knows what I'm talking about. If you don't, you're about to get put on, I guess. Right? The war in the heavens, where Lucifer goes to war. It's his jealousy for what God has planned for mankind and the relationship that God is establishing with his other creation, right? And Satan wanting to be in that position of power, of worship, right? So same thing here, right? Zod is going to war because one, obviously he wants power for himself, right? Hence why, Jor-El questions him like, who will decide whose bloodlines stay and go, or continue to exist or not, right? And he says, you, right? Insinuating, I know that's what you're thinking, right? Like you want me to join you, but you plan to be in power. Like you plan to rule. You plan to decide, that's already going against the very code.
Share his version of worship of his what he wants people to
who he deems worthy.
Yeah.
Right? So now, which is again in direct conflict with that of whatever the Kryptonian code already is, biblical side, the very code and ethics and that which God has established, covenant already that he has planned for us, right? Now, one would think, well, didn't the war in heaven happened in the beginning, way before Christ. Yes, true. For those who are up to par. For those who don't know, well, just bear with me here, follow me here. Yes, but we have to remember God exists in and out of time. Like past, present, and future already exist with him. Okay. So his plans for mankind were already set. His plans in general were already set the moment everything was created when he created it. Right. That's the idea. Personally, I also do believe that when you read the book of Genesis and you're looking at how he establishes his relationship with Adam and Eve, that's his plan, right? But I also believe Adam's choice to follow his wife, not follow his wife, but to fall with his wife, right? I believe that's a direct choice because he knew the plans God had for us, right? And not just that, but he also knew the plan that existed within the Savior himself. Like the very choice Christ would make, I believe Adam was.
I think also to interject real quick, I think what's very important is, and a lot of people seem to slip over that is, it's not so much the choice, it's the point of having the choice, if that makes sense. So the fact, I feel like, that Adam had that choice.
Right.
He felt it was his to make.
Yes. Well, yes, 100%. It was his to make, but surprisingly enough, the choice he made was the very choice he knew the Savior would make, right?
Yeah.
Right. Because keep in mind, right, like the church, the body, the believers, it's his bride, right? Anybody who accepts Christ, the church, whatever, are referred to as the bride of Christ, right? So if Christ is willing to die for his bride, so is Adam willing to die for his, right? Because he gave up immortality for mortality, right? In following Eve down the path, right? Because the question has gotten like, what happens if Adam chooses otherwise? You know what I mean? Nobody asks that question but I think it's because we're convinced, the way we're always told, is that he was just so stupid and in love with the very thing that Penn just put on the comments. That's who, you know what I'm saying? That he was just so whooped on that he just fell or something like that, right? And that's like a very just oversimplification, or that's just too easy. You know what I mean? That's just too easy and too stupid, really, because it's kind of like, so we're just going to pretend like days in the garden with God, with Christ, means nothing. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, keep in mind, the Bible in that moment talks about that there was a specific time in the day that God went to go visit Adam and Eve. The fact that it gives a specific time tells me that there is a specific time he would meet them in the garden, right? And so he did that this time around, and obviously they hid for obvious reasons, right? And one would probably point like, well, look at the accusation of Adam. It's like, well, he didn't lie, right? It was the actions of Eve that convinced him he had to follow, right? Yeah. It wasn't that he was deceived, right? Eve was deceived, not Adam, right? That's the part people need to realize. Adam wasn't the one deceived. It was Eve. Adam was convinced, but it doesn't specify the convincing or like what, and I might be saying convincing. I might not even say convince, right? But again,
I think it's what it is. Because I've been reading lately. I have this one. It's called the Action Bible that I've been reading actually, and it's a graphic novel of the whole entire Bible series. Pretty cool. They have a like a read out loud thing that you could do with it. Anyways, what I believe it is, I think Adam was the first to show forgiveness.
Oh, for sure. Well, yeah, no, well,
forgiveness
would say
to Eve.
it was the first forgiveness, love, and sacrifice, I feel, is what's embodied there. Because again, it's like your wife clearly did what she was supposed to. You still love her regardless, right? That's the message. It's the love that's still there regardless, right? And that's obviously the message of Christ, right? Loving regardless of, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's why he makes the choice he makes, right? But and then it's that sacrifice so that is needed, right? But in retrospect, it's a story of forgiveness as well, because obviously then the conversation between God, Adam, and Eve, one would think like, well, he punishes them. No, like, you know, and it's like, well, it's not that he's punishing them. It's just that what has to take place, right? Like, God cannot not be a man of his word, right?
Yeah.
So if he says that this is what's going to happen, this is what's going to happen. You know what I'm saying? Like, it has to happen now. Now I cannot break my word. I cannot now become a liar because I love you. But because I love you, I will forgive you and still make a way for you to now go forward. But that was already set with Christ, is my whole point. Like the story of Christ, and this is what I mean when I say Zach kind of does the same thing, right? So in the book of Genesis, what I'm trying to get at is you see the story of the gospel in a quick just consumption, and you see the prophetic notions of the gospel of the Christ, of the Messiah, of that throughout every story or moment, you know, that kind of goes forward up until the moment of Christ. So it's like it's kind of predestined. It's showing you before it even happens. And in a similar fashion, Zach does the same thing here. Like I said, because Man of Steel, in a sense, gives you the entire story in a way, but then it's like the genesis of the entirety of up until the moment of the story of the Gospels of Christ, right? And Zach does the same thing where it's like Man of Steel is like the Genesis version of that, but then you still get the gospel flushed out from, you know, going into BVS, going into whatever, right? But anyways, but back to the Man of Steel aspect of this, right? So I say that to say that Zod is fighting for the future of what Krypton had planned, aka what the heavens or God had planned, right? So Jor-El, representing being the figure of God, he already had a plan, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't for Krypton. Follow me here. It wasn't for Krypton, but it was for Earth, right? The world he was going to send his son to go be a part of. That's the future of Krypton. That's the future of the covenant, right? So the symbolism here is, again, Zod is Lucifer, and the Kryptonians following him are the fallen angels, right? The third of the heavens, right? Fell with Lucifer, whatever, blah blah. But when Krypton dies, the explosion of Krypton is a symbolism of the old covenant has to die in order for the new covenant to exist, right? The old covenant can no longer be in order for there to be a new covenant, right? Krypton is representative of the old covenant when Christ or Superman being sent with all of Krypton in him. So again, all the heavens, all of whatever that is, the purpose, right, of what? And we get to it later. We'll get there, but there is a purpose there, right? And again, Jor-El hints on it a bit, right? He says he'll be a god to them, right? And that's just play on words. Obviously, Zach is not trying to be super direct here because he's still trying to tell his own story via this other character, but he's very much understanding what this character is and who he is and what he embodies and all that, right? As we stated earlier, way before Zach even touched these characters. But anyways, so that's the symbolism of that. Old, out with the old, in with the new, right? Old covenant dead, or yeah, the old covenant is gone, done with the old covenant, Krypton destroyed. But because Jor-El's purpose, God's purpose, is that he's going to establish a new covenant with Earth, with with us, right?
Yeah.
So there's that symbolism, and obviously, yeah, there's the Moses angle too. I get that. I know a lot of people will reference that, like it's the Moses being sent in a basket, right,
to escape
the quarrels of and the destruction of his people by Egypt, whatever, blah blah. Which again, that is that too. I'm not. Yeah. There's no denying that.
But which it's like we said, it's a combination. So that could be the message as well.
Right.
In the story of Superman, not just Zack's
right.
depiction.
Well, that to me is again also the, how do you say, that's just another, again, depiction of the actual prophecy of Christ, right? Hence why even when you look at the Gospels, I think it's either in the Gospels or maybe even the Book of Revelation. I think it's Gospels though. They're undecided on who the Messiah is supposed to be, right? Or like,
right.
Even when they're talking about Jesus, some think he's Moses reincarnated because they believe Moses was the Christ, right? Because of his story. It almost matched the prophecies, right? And there's other prophets that kind of align, right? So maybe he's Isaiah, whatever, blah, blah. So again, it's not far off to think that they are going to squeeze that together and make that a thing, of course. And keep in mind, the creators of Superman, I believe they were Jewish. So
yeah,
Old Testament is very much Jewish scripture. Yeah. So, but anyways, fast forward, right? Boom, he lands on Earth. Jonathan and Martha Kent, right? Joseph and Mary, right? I didn't know this, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I came across this, when I was, doing my searches, like I said, when I was putting up notes together. Apparently, Martha, before she was Martha, her name was Mary. Did you know that?
Yes. It was either her grandmother's name, if I'm not mistaken, or something like that. But yes. And in some depictions, Mary is her middle name.
Right.
Martha Mary Kent.
So technically, Clark is raised by Mary. Okay. You know what I'm saying?
Another thing with that too, to add to that.
Yeah.
I could be wrong. Mary couldn't have kids, right?
Yeah, no. Or I don't know if she couldn't have kids, but she hadn't had any kids. The one who I think couldn't have kids, but then eventually had a kid, was Mary's cousin or aunt, which is John the Baptist's mom.
Okay.
I think she was the one who couldn't give birth, but then, gave birth, and hence why John the Baptist's dad was muted, because I don't know if he didn't believe or he laughed at the fact that God told him what was going to happen, and because he was in disbelief, he's like, all right, for that now you won't speak until she gives birth, which is crazy. You know what I'm saying? Like
nuts.
You know what I'm saying? That's just, Yeah. But yeah,
I say all that to say because Martha couldn't have kids. They tried for so long, and I know we're talking about Man of Steel, we're talking about the Zack trilogies, right. But a good depiction that shows this is Smallville. Smallville, they touch on the fact that's one of the first things on the line is like one of her dreams is to be seen by one of little face, and it's a kid because she can't have kids. And that's a big tenure throughout the story of Superman in Smallville that eventually in the show, and spoilers for Smallville, who's been out for like 20 years or more right. But there it comes to a part to where Jor-El grants Martha the privilege of having a child. And then when Clark makes a decision to go against Jor-El, it's taken away. So it's I know that's not on par with the Superman lore and stuff, but it's a take that Smallville took that it's very close to that. It was an interesting take.
That's good. No, that's real good. No, I mean, and again, actually that's a key note here because again, it's like when you're talking about consider that that's a whole nother writer there. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Not even Zach. That's you know what I'm saying. Like,
and that the
and that's
correlation
you know what
is
I'm
crazy.
saying. Even they know that there's some sort of correlation. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So again, for anybody who's like for some reason in denial, or I don't know, you don't want to believe, you know, the proof is just in the pudding. And the proof is in the pudding. And I think that to me can't be remiss, right?
I would like to add because
Yeah.
it's like hearing how you're depicting this, you know, and
Mhm.
and it's things that I've seen, but like hearing it out loud and just taking it all in, I understand why so many did not like James Gunn version because the way you're explaining this right now,
Mhm.
it looks like the approach, and I think that's why I not to say that I enjoyed it, but I understood it was that it seems like for Gunn, he took the back road of the character. So everything we're explaining, he flipped it and he told the story in that sense.
Right.
Whereas Superman was sent here to conquer, to do this. Whereas with Zach's story and the following of the Bible and all this, he was sent here to be that savior.
Right.
You understand? So it's almost like he did a flip on that. But yeah, let's stay on par here.
Right. No, well, again, you're kind of right on that because again, it's not even kind of you're right on that. That's and that was one of my
your gripes. Yeah, that's not the character of Superman.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because this is truly who he embodies throughout almost all comics. Right. Is actually this more messianic figure, right? Yeah. More than people like to admit. You know, but now again, interestingly enough, when you look in the Gospels, right, most of them start with the birth of Christ, right? Yeah. And then it kind of just jumps forward, right? Like almost like where is he at now, right? Like
like a montage,
yeah, like you know what I'm saying? And interesting love, that's exactly what happens in Man of Steel, right? You get the birth, him being sent, right?
Yeah.
And then boom, all grown. But interestingly enough, what is he doing? If you remember.
Who's
Man of Steel, Clark.
Yeah,
obviously you get the Krypton scene, rocket lands.
Yeah, and you have the montage of him as a kid. He, you know,
I don't know if you have him as a montage as a kid yet. What happens immediately after that?
It's either it's been a while, so okay. it's either the him in the water or saving the people with the fire in the fire.
You're too ahead now, but you're
too ahead. Okay, yeah.
Okay, he's on a boat with fishermen.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
Right?
Okay. Yeah.
Who does Jesus connect with in the beginning of his ministry? Right?
Yeah.
The fishermen.
The fisherman. Right? No, wait. That damn. Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah.
Okay.
Holy shit.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. I totally forgot about that part in Man of Steel. I forgot about the, you know.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
No, for sure. So
that's great. That's nuts.
That's nuts, right?
You're making me want to go watch the film again, Mega, all right?
I mean, I know I did because for me, that usually this is
I've seen it so many times that it's been to the point to where it's just, I mean, mind you, I've seen a lot of films as of late, so you know.
Well, my tradition usually for this weekend I watch this trilogy because I feel like it's telling the story. So for me, it's like it's tradition. I try and watch Man of Steel Friday, Saturday. I'll watch BVS, you know, and or sometimes I do I'll follow with the I'll probably do Man of Steel Palm Sunday. I'll do BVS today. I'll do Justice League on Resurrection Sunday.
I'm gonna have to do that. I've never
part of my zeitgeist of things that I like to do. You know what I'm saying? Okay. But so yeah, I'm kind of there. I guess you could say. But now, so again, immediately, boom, he's among fishermen. Okay, interesting choice by Zach, I would say, right? again, considering what this kind of whole story arc, who Superman depicts, right? Or who he embodies, or who he's reflecting, I guess, or, representing, I guess. Right now, in some iterations of the Gospels, right, Jesus goes to the fishermen like Peter and them, and he tells them about like where to go fish, and they're having a hard time, whatever. But then he says, go put it on this side, whatever. And then Peter's like, oh no, they don't, there's no fish. We've been fishing all day, blah, blah, blah. He's like, he tells them to do it, whatever. They do it, and all of a sudden there's an overflow of fish, right? They start sinking, right?
Yeah.
But anyways, that's I'm gonna get to two things there. What it actually kind of depicts here in this scene coming up, but also another scene that I think also can depict it. But but now fast forward from that, right? Like you said, the oil rig, right? It's on fire.
Yeah.
Now, this for me is probably like one of the most interesting concepts I've seen, right? And again, it's about following how the story goes, right?
Yeah.
So boom, Clark is among fishermen. He performs this act, right, of saving these people, right? Like you see him rip open the door, he's all on fire, right? And then gives him enough time to escape, blah, blah, blah. But he's technically not Superman just yet.
Yeah.
He's still Clark, right? And he's still on this journey, right, to discover his purpose, who he is, right? But it's this moment, technically, that you can kind of feel is it's a pivotal moment, right? It's what follows here, right? It's right, because you said something that happens, but that technically happens after this, right? So boom, he saves these people on the oil rig. He gives them like enough chance to try and get away, right?
Yeah.
And then they go for the last people, and he's holding the thing, right? They get away, but then the building collapses, or the rig collapses, right? And you're left with this image, which I was like, come on now. And it's this image here.
Yeah.
Baptism by fire and water, right? Right? And this is the first time it's happened, with Christ, right? This is the John the Baptist baptism, right? Where the Holy Spirit comes down. He's not like he's baptized by the water, but also fire, right? The fire of the Holy Spirit, right? And he even in other parts of the gospel, Jesus mentions this, right? Right now the baptism of water, but there will be the baptism by fire, referring to the Holy Spirit, right? And I just can't help but feel like this is that moment for Clark.
Yeah.
Okay. And why do I say that though? Like, okay, like, man, Mike, you're reaching.
Can I
Go ahead.
take the guess on that?
Yeah.
I mean, for how you kind of laid it out for us, outsider looking in, and watching this film, it's that moment where we kind of see a hesitant at first Clark to go save these people, because his whole life he's been told by Jonathan Kent that he can't be the guy that we know, Superman. He can't be that guy because the world's not ready for that.
Right.
He makes the choice to be that. And this, after he does it, he realizes this is who he is meant to be. This is the birth of his new meaning, his new reason of continuing. And he has to pursue that journey. And I feel like that's that correlation right here.
Yeah, no, for sure. And here's the thing, this because it's literally after this moment that you actually see him go on the journey, right?
Yeah.
This is the inception of that journey that he goes on after this very moment. But it's like when he's submerged, when he's baptized, what happens? He has a vision, or at least we assume he's having a vision, right? Like while he's knocked out there, you then go to that sequence of him as
a kid, and we learned that his dad always told him, "You can't do this, you can't do that," which it feeds off of that. The hesitancy.
Well, I think this moment, I think the callback to this, or the history moment here, I think, is when he's in school. Is the one
in school, but it eventually
leads, so it kind of builds up.
It builds up. It goes to the school bus. Then that's when Jonathan's there and he's in the back of the truck. He's like, "What did you want me to do? Like, let them die?" And John
Was that all in
said,
the same scene?
I believe so. If I'm not mistaken, I know it's been a while. It's probably been like a month since I've seen Man of Steel. Just because I've been really busy. But if I'm not mistaken, I believe it's from that montage. Because I do remember it being.
I do wonder. You might be right.
Yeah.
You might be right, but I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves just yet.
Or
now
yeah, because because now I also have the image of him, where he's getting bullied, right? But that was after that montage.
That's way after. That's
right. So that's what I'm saying. So I think it was like that. It was him in the classroom.
No, okay. The scene you're talking about, I believe happens. I believe the scene you're talking about. Yeah, no. So the scene you're talking about, that history part is when he's talking to Lois in the graveyard.
Yeah.
No. That's the hurricane. That's the tornado scene.
That's the tornado scene. That's what I'm saying. That's I think that was.
I don't know. This is you're right. I'm kind of lost on where these history. Now you got me confused.
I might have to pull it up because the thing is that.
Well, either way, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah. It plays into the very thing that I want to get to, anyways, right?
Yeah.
But what I was gonna say is this, right? So, boom, right? This is the moment he has that montage or not, right? It takes him to there's a vision. He gets the vision, right? And all of a sudden, boom, back to the present, and you see him kind of go on this journey, right? But you, you see him go on the journey, right? He gets out the water, gets the socks, right? And some will say, well, he's not very Christ-like if he's stealing people's clothes. But again, this is not everything's the same, bro. We're not saying everything's exactly, that he's exactly Christ. That's not really what I'm saying either. It's just certain depictions that are depicting the gospel, right? And I will say this just to clarify: Superman is his own character too, like that. There's his own thing happening here too.
But Superman is that image that Christ was for us, and the thing is, the Christ that we see and all that, he wasn't all that at first. He became that, as in Clark became Superman.
And that's the interesting part, low key, is that we really don't even see Christ as a kid, right? So that's right. It's kind of like he
became the Messiah.
Yeah, he kind of becomes. There's like maybe like one insert of him, like maybe as a teenager. I think they say like 12 or 13 years old, where he was like in the temple, in a sense, like chopping it up with the teachers of the day, and they were impressed that a kid so young knew the scriptures that well. And then like I think his parents went to go look for him, and that's where they found him in the temple doing such thing, and everybody marveled. Which to me, that's where I didn't want to jump too far ahead, because the scene you're talking about, that kind of gets to that, right? So what I mean by that is this, right? So let's just say it's not. Whether or not it is, I don't know.
Yeah.
What I will say is that this scene that we're looking at. Or this scene that we're looking at, I'm like looking. I go like this because to me it's over here.
Yeah.
Properly. So this scene we're looking at, it's that, right? Which again, if you look at the Gospels, right, and most of them, he gets baptized, right, and then it sets him on this journey. But where's the journey he goes on? It sends him to the wilderness, right? Yeah. And it's in the wilderness where he's tempted and tried, right? Retrospect. Correlation here, right? Like kind of the mirroring aspect here is that when Clark goes on his journey, right, he gets those clothes, whatever, and the next part of his journey takes him to that bar where he's working out of, whatever. But what happens there? He's tempted and tried, right, to do something he's not supposed to, right? But you see more moments of this, but it's interesting enough to see that this is the journey he's on his way to a version of a wilderness, right? Not the desert, but we're talking about the cold, but still technically out there in the wilderness, in the sense of like you're out of society. It's a remote location, you know what I mean? Same thing, right? Where Christ goes to the desert, Clark goes to the snow, right? He's trying to connect with his father, right? With his people, with his purpose, right? And this matters though. Why? Because it's on this very journey that once he gets to the point of where he's supposed to be, right? Whether it's Christ, Clark, whatever, right? For Christ, he's in the desert for I think 40 days, 40 nights, right? Fasting, obviously again, that the fasting is a form of worship and it's a way of connecting with the Father, it's a way of connecting with God. I imagine that's why he's doing so, right? But then he's tempted by the devil. But after that moment, after succeeding and passing the trials and the temptation and the trip, whatever that came his way, he then is given the mission, and then he goes, and now they're set on their way, him and his disciples. Yeah. In similar fashion, when Clark goes to the ship, where again it's in the middle of nowhere, his wilderness, so to speak, to connect with his father. When he finally does, his father pretty much obviously gives him the history, all that. Boom, he connects with his father, his people, whatever, his purpose, and then now he's given purpose and he's sent on his way, right? Like,
he takes first flight,
and he takes his first flight. You know what I'm saying? But that's where he becomes who he becomes, right? Because people need to understand, even for Christ, same thing. The every miracle and thing that he does is once he's sent on the mission, right? He first gets baptized, goes into the wilderness, and then boom, on mission. Same thing here. That's when he finally becomes who he becomes. Like mission, ministry, boom, boom, boom. Same thing here. Superman figures out who he is, given purpose, sent on his way, first flight, becoming Superman, right? That's when we first see him in the red and blue, whatever, right? Now I'm trying to think if there's even like, and Carlos, maybe you can help me here.
Mm-hmm.
When he tells them, "You will give the people of Earth something to strive." That's in that scene too, right? Something to strive towards. They will.
Yes, that
is. They will run. They will fall. But
that's his first flight scene.
That's his first flight, right? So I'm on point here, right?
Jor-El is narrating,
right,
pretty much while he's, taking that
first flight, right?
Yeah.
No,
he hits the mountains and then he jumps up and
right. Now, the reason I think that's key and why I feel it's worth noting is because even though it's not like verbatim scripture, right?
Yeah.
It's still reminiscent of certain verses, which again were in my notes. Unfortunately, I can't tell you which exact ones, and it's kind of pissing me off that I can't, because I would have preferred to do so. But essentially, it felt reminiscent of like in the book of John, I believe it's chapter 3. I forgot to share this. Also, let me share this. I thought this is interesting. You might like this one. Where I came across this. Not that it's the exact movie scene, but it's technically from a comic.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
But it reminded me of the scriptures like when John, or I think it's in the book of John, when Christ says, in my Father's house there are many mansions. If it weren't so, I wouldn't say, but I go to prepare a place for you, and it felt reminiscent of that. It felt there was like another verse there that says like that we would do the things he does, but even greater things we shall do, right?
Yeah.
Essentially like joining him in whatever Christ, in the same way Christ is called to do what he is called to do, but he calls us to do the same, but even greater things, right? And we will join him, right? That's what it felt reminiscent of hearing this line. It's like, they will follow you. They will, run, they will fall. Same thing. we follow Christ, but we fall along the way. You know what I mean? But we want to join him, right? We want to join
we
him.
doubt him, and we do this, and yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, again, it's same concept here. Like Jor-El's telling him the prophecy of exactly how this is going to play out, you know, and it's not that different, you know, from essentially what Jonathan was saying, right? Like it's like essentially they're not perfect. They're going to fall short, you know, but they will join you, right? That is what this is all about, right? And there's even a further thing that he says. We'll get there later when it comes into the movie, but anyways, I thought this was interesting because this is actually part of a comic, and I tried to find which comic it was in. I couldn't find which comic it's in, but nonetheless, I thought it was cool because it was like, again, just one of those other things where people think that Zach doesn't know his comics, and you know what I'm saying? But here you go, you get almost an exact line, almost, of Jor-El, or you know, something being said, you know, to whatever, you know, almost
to add to that to this is for one, the way of the voice and everything of Jor-El speaking to Superman and kind of narrating over it. The first Superman film of Christopher Reeve, when he goes through his own journey and he finally finds the Fortress of Solitude, where he's a young kid, and then in that same, it's not a montage, but he gets the suit and he's an older Christopher Reeve as Superman, while Jor-El is narrating him, and he's taking Christopher Reeve is taking that first flight away. So almost, again, I've mentioned 3 shows now.
Yeah,
all of them have linked to, you know, what we're talking about here, of this character, and you know, it's crazy to the essence of what Zach does. Right. It's almost like paying homage to not only scripture, to not only Christ, but then also the lore that came before in general, whether it's comics, whether it's Reeves, but he does it so much in a way that it feels like his own. Right. Like you can pay homage, you can tell, you know, maybe the same story, but when you give it your own flair, it's just, you know, where a lot of directors, especially when it comes to this genre of superheroes, they can't do it like him. Unfortunately, I don't want to, you know, make it sound like that, but it's true. It's you know.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, yeah, it's 100% right. So again, you're looking at this scene, same thing. He sends him on his way, like giving him purpose. This is why I sent you. You know, now your mission begins, and boom, you get the first flight. I thought I had images of that. I guess not. So now, again, to go back to what we were talking about as far as that other montage, right? With him saving the kids on the bus. I thought that one was interesting too, because in the end, when you well, there's a couple things there, right? So, and I didn't know this. This again, I came across just doing research and stuff. And did you know? And maybe you did, because I think he's a character in Smallville too. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, but we'll go there. I don't even know why I'm asking yet. But anyways, so that scene where he saves the kids in the bus, right? Yeah. Now, interestingly enough, right, in that scene, right, you have that kid. His name is Pete Ross, right? Yep. Which, for people who don't know, is actually a prominent figure, technically, throughout Superman life. Lore. Yeah. You know? And so, interestingly enough, what I found intriguing about this, right, is because his name's Pete, right? Another word or another name close to that is Peter. Okay. Yeah. Now, in the scene, right, the kid kind of messes with Clark, right? Like he's definitely not his friend, right? But there's a moment, right, where obviously the bus goes into the I guess the river or something, whatever it is, lake, pond, whatever, I don't know what it was.
Yeah.
And Clark does what he does, right? He's like, screw it, somebody's got to do something here.
Yeah.
Right. He boom gets out, saves the bus. Yeah, he gets all the kids out. Boom. That's technically his first act, I guess. But again, a little different, but not so different, right? Different in timeline as far as chronological story is concerned, but not different in the sense of the way the story was told, right? Yeah. Everything you see Superman do, you know what I'm saying? As far, you know what I'm saying? Like follows a certain moment, right? But again, then he realizes, oh, Pete Ross isn't in this bus. Where's Peter? I have to go save Peter or Pete from drowning, right? Christ saves Peter twice, technically, or no, twice? No, once, technically. There's the two moments with the waves and the storm, but there's the one moment where he tells Peter to walk towards him, right? Peter walks and then he starts drowning, right? And Christ has to save him, right? Mm-hmm. So I thought that, to me, that's what that embodies, right? That's a symbol of that almost. But also when it goes to that sinking aspect, right, with the ship thing, with the fisherman, right? The boat starts to sink, right? But before that moment, like I said, Peter doubted Jesus, right? Like because he didn't know, he couldn't recognize who he was, right? Yeah. And it's after that moment where he's like, he believes who he is and he decides to follow him, right? And essentially, I guess, be a follower, be a friend. In this point of the story, right, he saves Pete Ross, right? Now, you don't know technically that they're friends, but you can assume that, because then there's that other scene when he's being bullied, who's there to pick him up?
Yep, Pete. And he clenches the fence and he hands out his hand. Exactly. Now, funny enough to correlate that, because you mentioned Smallville. Mm-hmm. So with Smallville, Pete was actually Clark's best friend, like to start off. And that's how you start off. He's his best friend. And he allows Clark at a certain age feel human.
Right.
Because funny enough, Pete is the first one on the show to find out about his powers.
Right. He finds out who Superboy is.
Yeah. And the difference in that is there is a time where Pete literally needs to leave and, because the burden of holding this secret, of being in the shadow of Clark, there's a built of resentment, but also safety net that he has to leave Smallville and do his own thing. Whereas here it's more of the opposite of the story of Pete Ross, where he starts as that bully. He starts as a guy who doubts and then is the only one who's there till we see him, and I know we'll get to it, but later when the whole bank scene, when he the Smallville fight scene where he rips through the diner, and you got the IHOP. Yeah, shout out IHOP. You see Pete there, like, that's him.
Right.
Holy crap.
Right.
Yeah.
No, exactly. So I thought that was a cool correlation. But now, following that, right, then you get to the scene where it's, his parents talking, Pete Ross's parents talking with Jonathan and Martha Kent.
Yeah.
And this now takes me back to that temple sequence, right? Like when Christ, as a teenager, is in the temple and people are in awe of how he's speaking, and they're like, isn't that, Joseph and Mary's son, whatever. And they're kind of already like, yo, there's something special about this kid. In that scene, they think there's something special with Clark.
Yeah.
And they believe it's he's heaven sent. They're on the cusp of the very thing he is, you know what I'm saying? This is but there's like a certain, I forget the word they use. This is oh my gosh. I can't believe that's eluding my mind.
I think I know what you're trying to say. It's almost like in layman's terms, it's almost like a glimpse to the future of the coming of
oh my gosh, I can't believe I can't remember the name or the word. There's a word they use, and it's a word not used in like theological. It's a theological word for sure. This is, oh man, it's like, I feel like it's something with an R. It's essentially like God ordained. You know what I'm saying? This is God ordained. Something like that. Oh my gosh, it's kind of, I really hate that I can't remember what they say. Anyways, but again, to me, it's depicting of that, right? Like at an early age, Jesus was catching eyes.
Yeah.
Same thing here at an early age, Clark is catching eyes, right? Of what's to come, Now let's fast forward a bit, right? And you get to, I guess we can answer Pinzone's question here. Who is Lois? Is she Mary Magdalene or the world? She could be all that, I would say, but
yeah. And at points, I think throughout the trilogy, she is.
Yeah, she's an embodiment of those things. But I would also place her more closer to. She's representative of those who believe, who come to believe.
Yeah,
she's another believer, just like Pete Ross, just like Martha, Jonathan. Regardless of their concern for Clark coming out, they knew he was special, right? They knew who he was. There was only a select people who knew who Superman was, right, or who Clark was, right,
yeah.
and what he could do, to a certain degree, right? To a certain degree. Because that gets into the other aspect of things, but because there's let's not get too ahead of ourselves. I don't want to say that they knew everything he could do, but they knew for sure he was sent from somewhere else, right? And there's that conversation, right? Between matter of fact, following that very scene that we were talking about, where Christ, where Clark, saves the bus, and those parents go to talk to them, and then there's this, the scene where then Jonathan, he sees that Clark is outside by himself, and then so he's like, okay, you know what, let me go have that father and son moment, heart to heart, you know what I mean, and and so they talk, whatever. And, it's just funny that the conversation is funny alone. That God did this to me, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But scratch all that, right? Because like someone will take that and say like, oh, see, here's the moment where it's dismissing. It's like, again, I'm not saying that this is the exact story. Keep in mind, I'm just saying
the message. Exactly. The message.
The message that's there, that's very parallel to that of the Gospels, right? But even that conversation, right, eventually they go down, right? And he says, I have to believe you were sent here for a reason. So regardless of Jonathan trying to protect Clark, he knew Clark was sent there for a reason, right? Yeah. And you kind of get that even in the Bible, you kind of get that, right? Like, again, Joseph and Mary concerned with where Jesus is. And it turns out he's at the temple, and they're like, what are you doing here, right? They're concerned as parents would be, Yeah. And he says, I'm in my father's house about my father's business, Obviously, Jesus knew who he was immediately, to a certain degree, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. More so than Clark, but either way, there's still that concern as parents, but it's key because, again, I want people to understand that though they're protecting him, there's a few people that know Clark is special and that believe he's here to do something special. And so, again, it starts with the parents, obviously. Then it's, Pete Ross. You can imagine, again, the story's not fully flushed out, but you can imagine there's others there that know or might know something.
Yeah.
Maybe. But at the very least, we can for sure know it's Pete Ross, right? So he's already one of the few believers of Clark. And, again, I would assume is his friend because they have that moment.
Yeah.
And then to answer who Lois is, again, she's another one of those disciples, I guess you could say.
Pete was also at his funeral, so yeah, I do believe.
Yes, that's right.
Like there is that big cutscene where we see him at the funeral in BVS.
100%. So there's that, and yeah, you can imagine maybe there were many probably other things that Clark did that put him on the map, in Smallville,
Yeah.
Anyways,
on the show, they have an interesting there's like an episode that touches on this. It's a big climax for the end of season. I think it's season 1 or season. Yeah, I think season 1. There's a big twister that happens and whatnot. And so Jonathan gets trapped in this cave with a reporter who finds out about Clark's power. Like, that he has powers. He's, he doesn't know that he's not from this earth, but he knows that he's special. And, this whole thing happened because Jonathan was trying to, quote unquote, stop him from revealing this, and they get trapped under this house or whatnot. Long story short, they start talking about it, and John is explaining his story of why he's kept it a secret for this long, why him and Martha haven't told anybody, why they falsified the birth certificate and all this, because when they did get him as a baby, they tried taking him to the doctor to see what was wrong with him. And then he saw the test equipment, and he told them that we knew that if we were to leave him there, they would never see their son again. Yet the reporter is saying, what was your plan? To keep him to build, to work on your farm and to do this? Like, he is the next coming of, quote unquote, Jesus. Like, the world needs to see him.
Right.
And Jonathan and Martha chose it will be his time when he chooses to be that.
Right.
He doesn't need to be that because he's not, he not to say that he isn't that, it's his choice to become that.
Right.
So that it's almost like a correlation in that. And it's like where she's choosing to be the Messiah, just as Jesus at that time chose to become the Messiah, to be the Messiah.
Right.
Even though he was.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And I kind of, I'm upset that I didn't pull this up. This was the Superman in the wilderness,
Yeah.
I mean,
that's a crazy photo right there.
Coming out of the wilderness and embodying, the glory of who, the mission he's about to take on. Yeah. So I'm kind of, why didn't I get that? I forgot about that. Which is why I had my notes. My notes had, when I was doing things, it's like, you try so hard to do well. No, but okay, let's go ahead and fast forward some things here. But yeah, I think Lois Lane is she represents those who come to believe, whether it's the disciples, something like a Mary Magdalene, right? Mary Magdalene comes to believe, all those people. She's embodiment of all those people. You know what I'm saying? That at some point where she could be Zacharias, those that were just curious, like, who is this guy? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Who sees him do something and they're, you know what I'm saying? Like, very much can be any of those, you know what I'm saying? People who's like wonder, like, who is Jesus, right? Like, and then they finally see what he can do. They hear him speak, and then they know he is who he says he is, right? And they're convicted because they know, that he is the Messiah, whatever. I believe that's what she represents in this film. She obviously sees him perform a work. She's now more curious about him. She keeps like, I got to find who this guy is. And, so you see that even in the Bible, right? People were thirsty to follow where Christ was going, right? It says that multitudes when they would find out where he was, they would gather, saying to where he was at. And whenever he would leave, they would try and find out where was he going, because they wanted to either one, be in the presence of who they believed he was, two, is this really him? Yeah, because there are those moments. And again, this film kind of touches on that a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's deeper in BVS, the whole conversation of who is this man, right? But we're not there yet. So, but I believe that's what she represents, because then eventually she comes to that graveyard scene, right? And you get that sequence, right? But and then at that moment, she now knows who Clark is. Yeah. And she believes in him, and she's willing to keep his identity a secret, right? Keep in mind, there are many moments where Christ performs a miracle and he says, let no one know who did this, right? Yeah, and or even throughout the Gospels, there's many moments where it says it was intentionally hidden or not revealed to people who he was, so that the word can fulfill itself. Right.
Yeah.
So there are certain people that just couldn't come to see who and accept who Christ was. Right. So in a sense, that's that, and you see that throughout the film. Right. From again, Lois, she becomes one that believes, but you still have the government. Right. That moment where they're questioning him.
Where
or
he's
even
like, I was born in Kansas, or whatever. I was
Woodburn,
raised, yeah.
the Woodburn converse, or not Woodburn, uh, oh my gosh,
The general.
no,
You talking about?
Lois's boss,
Oh, Perry.
Perry. You're
Yeah,
saying
Perry White.
conversation they have, right? He's kind of like, yo, this is crazy. Like, no one's gonna believe this. Again, it's same narratives, right? Like, then eventually he's like, I believe you saw something, but whatever,
So I do have a question on that.
Mhm.
Right? And I've never really asked anybody this question. Do you believe Perry knew who Clark was?
That's a good question.
Because like I feel like with what happens in Man of Steel, and then they go to BVS, and in BVS it almost like he does it, but it feels like towards the end of Man of Steel, he kind of does because of everything that happened, and then all of a sudden he gets that job. He gets a job at a Daily Planet, and then it's like business as usual.
Yeah,
You
no,
know?
I see. That's the thing. I think because of Man of Steel, I'm not so sure you know what? No, I can answer that. I don't think he does. I don't think he does.
You think too much was going on in the world, and it was just too hard to.
Too much was going on.
Yeah.
Superman is the story, not Clark. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then, even in the papers, same thing. No, I mean, but don't get me wrong. Maybe there is a room for that, for that idea. But I can't say that it's evidently shown. Evidently, it shows more that he doesn't know.
Yeah.
You can play around with the idea that that's him faking the funk for the sake of Superman and Clark being able to keep his identity a secret. But that's a stretch. That's, unless Zack Snyder says something like that.
The only reason, well, then again, yeah, you kind of did say it because it's more of the Superman thing. Because in BVS, and I know we're not on BVS yet, which we may have to table that to another episode for me.
Yeah.
Because I would love to continue this conversation. I it's like almost seeing this movie and it throughout new eyes. So this is awesome, and I would love to do that with BVS. But I say all that to say is that in BVS, when they start quote unquote turning on Superman,
right,
and everyone starts questioning Superman,
right,
that same crew from Man of Steel, they all look at each other,
mm-hmm.
and are like if knowing who he really is and knowing that he can never do the things that these people are saying. So it's like, that's why I always question, like, does he know? Does he not know? And I kind of like that we don't know that. And it kind of gives us something to think about in the movie. It adds more, you know.
Like you said, that's we can leave that for the BVS part of the discussion, and we can have that discussion. Because there is an interesting factor to that too. But yeah, that's like another.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But just to kind of finish this Man of Steel part of the gospel, I guess you could say.
Heck yeah,
but yeah, so Lois Lane for me is that, and then and like I said, there's other characters within the story arc that represent the people not coming to believing who Superman is, or some believing, some don't, some in coming to believe, because it takes the acts of Christ to occur for people to start believing, or at least
seeing it.
You know what I mean? So there's that. Now back to the no, I'm jumping ahead of myself. Hold on. I don't want to lose myself here. Let me make sure okay, here we go. Is that the one? Yeah, I'll get that one ready. So wait a minute. Hold on. Give me a second. Okay, no, that is the one. All right. So let's kind of fast forward a bit. I'm gonna have this ready, but not that it's the one I'm gonna put up just yet. Now, interestingly enough, right? Let's just fast forward. We get that Lois and Superman scene. She comes to believe. Things go forward. Superman talks with his mom, all that cool stuff,
Yeah.
And but then shortly after, if I'm correct, and correct me if I'm wrong, but shortly after, that's when Zod comes in, right?
No, yeah. After that talk, he's eating, he's watching a football game, and then that's when the message comes up for the first song.
Right. So now, what I like about that scene, oh snap! What I like about that scene is that essentially is what he tells the people of Earth, right? And that's that he's all like, he will dress like you, he'll look like one of you, but he's not one of you, right? And
in other words, he takes what Jor-El says and flips it.
Exactly. Yeah. Which again is, if he's Lucifer, that's what he comes to do. Let me perverse the truth, right?
Yeah.
And that's exactly what he does, right? And he paints Superman somewhat of an enemy of the stick. He's an enemy, or you have to turn him over. Which, keep in mind, that's this is what I like about Passion of the Christ, right? That you kind of see happening here, right? Because if Zod is Lucifer, right? If you ever saw Passion of the Christ, the way Mel Gibson portrays it, you have Satan in the background, like throughout the whole movie, right? This weird bald-headed, almost looking like kind of looks like it kind of looks like
Lord Voldemort.
Yeah, Voldemort. Yeah, there you go. The Harry Potter brother. He looks like Voldemort. Yeah. I was like, I know I'm not the only one. But he's always in the background lurking, especially manipulating, especially manipulating the Pharisees and all that, to go against Jesus. You know what I'm saying? And at every turn they get to try and get them to, the people to turn against them, the Pharisees and all that, right? So essentially, this is what Zod's trying to do here, right? Now, the very kind of following scenes is right. We know Perry calls Lois. FBI's trying to get Lois. Blah blah blah. Right.
Yeah.
But the more important scene, that's like one of the most iconic scenes ever, and this is why I say it's crazy, because the depictions in the story that Zach's telling, it's all relative to the gospel or the Passion of the Christ, but it's almost like also placed in where he wants it, so to speak, right?
Yeah. It's almost like his telling.
Yeah.
Of it, Right.
But like I said, it's funny how it's all here in Man of Steel, but you really get the more fleshed out version throughout the films. But yeah. I say that to say that then what follows is this very scene, which is the most iconic scene ever, as far as when you're talking about talk about on the nose. Although I feel like I've shown kind of some other things, but this one right here, it doesn't get more on the nose than this one. And it's this scene here. And that's the prayer in the garden, right?
Yeah.
Behind him, right? Which is great, because in this scene, this is Clark wrestling with the very choice he has to make of surrendering himself, which is the very prayer Christ is praying in the garden, right? Father, take this cup from me, if it be so, right? Yeah. If you but if you will it, I'll take the cup, right? And it's that struggle of I know the surrender I'm about to take, the surrendering to the world. I know I have to do it, but it's a heavy burden, and it's that contemplation. Same thing here, and it's a different burden, because obviously Clark's is more from this place of can I trust? I don't know if I can trust, right? But either way, it's that struggle, because he knows he should. Inherently inside, he wants to save humanity, right? The right choice is they're obviously obvious, right? It's give myself up so the world can be saved, so that the world may live. That's a no-brainer for him, but he's still contemplating with it, because it also comes with a heavy burden. One, I don't trust Zod. Two, I'm not so sure I can trust mankind either. There's a heavy burden there. So this scene right here, this is the one that's the most on the nose, in my opinion, or at least one of the ones that are really on the nose.
Well, it confirms the journey if you start to see it that way, it confirms it in a sense where this is what one of many, because like you're saying, it touches throughout the trilogies. We see the full arc, we see the full story,
Right.
but within each film, it's almost like we're reading a segment of each passage
Right.
that all comes together, you know?
Right. No, 100%. 100%. Right. So, and I like this scene a lot too, because again, think about it, right? God or Christ in the background, the very image in the background, the prayer in Gethsemane.
Yeah.
He's praying to God, the Father figure, right? The Father, a Father. In this scene, Clark is talking to a father, right?
Yeah.
In the church, right? The father of the church, right? So again, it's a funny way of just depicting the very action, right? Like in real time, while the very thing you're displaying is behind you. You know what I'm saying? Again, it's so Zach. Why I love him as a director. It's these kind of things he does that are just, worth every minute of consumption, right?
We need them back. We need them back.
right. But so shortly after that, boom, that there's that, and then he makes the choice, right? And it's the choice of surrendering, submitting himself to the world, and which again, it's depicted very shortly after. You get him obviously show in front of the armies, of the United States, right? In glorious fashion, I'd say, and obviously they have that little back and forth. Let's see if I can find the image though. Okay, here we go. But he finally surrenders. Now it's funny because I found this side by side image I thought was really cool. But again, like I said, keep in mind that for some reason the story's flushed out here in Man of Steel, but it's flushed out even more throughout the trilogy. So, but this essentially I felt was like a really good depicting image that kind of embodies the very same nature of what's happening, I guess you could say. But it's this one right here. And but again, just a moment to just what you're witnessing, right? Superman allows them to actually take him, right? To cuff him, right?
Yeah.
And same thing when you're looking. I wish the actual image I wish they would have actually paralleled with this would be in the garden, in the very garden. It's really the one that should have been depicted here. When Judas actually betrays him and turns him in, and the guards of the Pharisees take him, right? That's what really should have. I feel the more parallel, but I felt still same thing. You're seeing a man who technically, if he wanted it, if he willed it, if he deemed us not worthy enough, you know what I mean, or not, if he didn't value us, didn't have to do this. Now, the reason I say the Gethsemane image would have been better is because, right, this same very scene, right, you see Superman cuffed, right, and then there's this, they take him into the interrogation room. Lois Lane is there. They're having that conversation, right, and even the dialogue, same thing, right, like, you let him cuff you. Would it be much of a surrender if I didn't, right? So again, it's a sign of submission, sign of surrender. Visually, like I'm letting you guys, I'm surrendering to you, and this is essentially what Jesus does too, right? I felt what's crazy though too, and this is why I thought it would have been better the other way around, is because in that same sequence, right, when they, when Dr. Emil, whatever, says, "Excuse me," right, and okay, boom, and they start talking. Or no, he's about to say who he is, right? And then he says, and he finishes the name for him, right? And then he says, "I can see this," and he starts showing his power. He starts, saying, like, I'm surrendering to you, but I'm about to show you, you guys really don't control me, right? And he's like, I see your tag, I see that the breath mint stuff, whatever he has, like the alpha roll or whatever, and I also see the guards, whatever, blah blah, right? So he says that, right? He shows that. And then the real moment is when he just easily just gets up, uncuffed.
He's like, let's put all the cards on the table.
Put all the cards on the table. You don't control me, whatever, blah blah. Right? It's a showing his power, but still surrendering to the to
show. I think it's more of showing his restraint.
His restraint, exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. For the overall cause of what needs to happen, right?
Yeah.
And then, so in the similar fashion, the prayer of Gethsemane, when they go to get Jesus, and they have to confirm who he is, right? And he asks him who he is, and he says, "I am." Right? Now, if I'm correct, I think in the Hebrew version or the Greek language version, I think he says Yahweh, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when he says that, it says that the people, everyone that was there to capture him, immediately got pushed back. Like they fell back, like through just sheer force. It's almost like you ever played Skyrim?
Yes.
So when you use the word, the thumb, the word, the power of the word, and then there's that one that flies people back.
Yeah,
that's essentially what happened.
I know that way too well.
Yeah. I
still have nightmares.
yeah. And I think even it's displayed in Passion of the Christ, the Mel Gibson movie. So that's why I think that's a better image to display there, because that's essentially what's happening. It's a moment of surrender, but a moment of like, I am who I am. Like, technically, if I wanted it, you wouldn't get me, but I'm allowing you to get me.
That is a famous line that we hear later down the line.
Exactly.
If you wanted it,
yeah, exactly. Right. So, boom. Okay, cool. Fast forward. Right. He's finally on the ship with Zod, whatever. And he's trying to adjust to the atmospherics, boom, but he gets sick, boom, then he gets into that vision, right? Now this vision I feel is more representative of the moment of Satan tempting Jesus, right? Because in that moment, right, he's obviously, he's trying to give Clark, or Kal-El, Superman, his version of the story, right, of what happened on Krypton, right, and then essentially what happened and how he got to him, right. But the interesting part about that is I think this is the one, is that it's a twisted version, right, of again, back to the truth. If Zod is Lucifer, he's twisting the truth, right? So he tells his version of it, right? He was fighting for Krypton. He was, trying to do what was right for Krypton, right? And obviously BSing the whole time, But wait, I lost the image. Here it is. Oh, here we go. Boom. Okay. And but it's what follows also that I guess it to me is more reminiscent of that moment when he tries to tempt Christ, right? And that's that he tells him that if he kneels before him, if Jesus kneels before him, the kingdoms of the earth will be his, right? And in similar fashion, Zod says, "Join me, and we'll rule Earth together." You know what I'm saying? We can rule together. We can do this together. We can rule Earth, whatever. Only problem is again, Zod's version of ruling Earth is the death of Earth, right?
Yeah.
So obviously Superman says, "I can't take a part of that," which again is the truth, even with Satan's temptation towards Christ, right? Like Satan's depiction of him ruling Earth or thinking he rules Earth, right, is a Earth where he lies, he cheats, he steals, and he takes from us, right? And it's death, it's murder, it's all that, right? So it's everything opposite of what should be. So that's his kingdom that he's offering Christ, technically, right? And similar fashion, the kingdom or the rulership, what he's trying to tempt Clark with is is not it. It's opposite of what Jor-El wants him to do, right?
Yeah.
And you get this sequence that I thought was actually kind of, it's really deep, and it kind of sucks because it's kind of, but I'm gonna bring it because I thought this was cool, and but it's the very, it's like, well, if you, well, then what can you be a part of sequence, right? And he starts sinking, right, in the skull of, or the lake of skulls, right? The skulls. But I thought this was an interesting image, right? Because now this is why I say again, it's like the things that were in this movie, like again, they do show everything essentially in the gospel, but it's almost like a precursor to what comes, right? And what I thought was interesting about this is that obviously, yes, the bones, right, are, what do they represent in that scene? They represent us, humanity, dead.
Yeah.
It's going to be, Krypton is going to be built, the kingdom that Zod wants to establish is.
So that's a question I have for you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe that this image of him, because I always wondered why was he always look in the BVS photo, why does he look so like distraught in this photo? Obviously there is other stuff going on, but do you think in that moment he's thinking of this moment with Zod?
Oh yeah,
what's going on?
I think there is a part of him that remembers that again, and not everybody, but a lot of people have skull faces.
Yeah.
Right. So symbolically, it's interesting because in scripture, right, the death and sacrifice of life or of Christ is what gives us life. Prior to that, we were dead already, right? Because the wages of sin is death, right? So symbolically, interestingly enough, the kingdom Zod wants to establish is us dead, right?
Yeah.
Right. And then now in the scene in BVS, they're celebrating the Day of the Dead, but there are people, right? There are people that are, in a sense, celebrating death. Symbolically, we are dead, right? Like we are living in a world that's already judged and condemned, right? Hence why Christ had to come to save us from that condemnation, right? Superman that's the symbol there, is he knows. I think there's a vision of, like, he remembers that vision. And keep in mind, like you said, what is he going through, right? The battle that's happening in that movie, the very struggle of, like, people, not everyone accepting him for who he is, like that, they're believing that he's here to do good, questioning his very existence, his very motives, essentially where his heart lies, is essentially what they're asking, and
every time I see this film, I always forget that he's wearing, this is the official first time we see him in the black suit. In Man of Steel. I always forget that. Every time I watch it, it always gets me for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like a nice, cool, full circle moment. We see that same suit in Zack Snyder's Justice League. Obviously upgraded, but we do see it later, in black. So right.
But so now, interestingly enough, the symbolism even of just even the Man of Steel moment is that essentially he's being sunk and he's going to be drowning or something, like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's almost like prophecy. Like, you are going to have to die for these people that are already dead in order for them to live. You know what I mean? Like, it's a symbolism of that, in that moment, he's thinking, like, because he denies the very notion of what Zod or Lucifer offers, right? Like, the whatever the alternative is, I don't want that. But in order for that not to occur, like death, the death has to occur, right?
Yeah, doesn't Zod have a line where he's like, if you won't join me, you would die with them in a
Yeah,
sense.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Then you can die with them or something like that. Something
yeah,
like that. So again, another I thought very much parallel to something representative of the Bible, right? Fast forward right now we can just kind of fast forward a bit to get to the meat of things. And this is why I say, like, it's funny because in this story alone you kind of get the gospel, whatever, but again, in hindsight, we know the full version of it is actually within the trilogy itself.
yeah.
But fast forward, obviously, boom.
A good way to I don't mean to cut you off real quick, but a good way to kind of like depict it, how each film does it, is how you were describing how the kids were seeing Clark before Clark became Superman as a younger kid.
Right.
How Zack portrayed each film is almost like we're seeing the glimpse of the overall story, like the overall, but it's still, we have the Messiah there,
Right. No, you're right about that. So interestingly enough, right, like you follow this and then it's like, the whole scene, like now he's back, to shape, whatever, blah, blah. And then obviously Jor-El did that whole sequence, right? Lois,
yeah.
Boom. And then obviously you get to that scene where, it's Jor-El gets Lois off the ship, but obviously it's kind of damaged, whatever. But thankfully the atmospherics of the ship kind of now go to Earth, so Superman gets strength, whatever, blah blah. And but it's that scene that we all, again, the other on the nose image. If I can find it, I thought I had it here already. What is going on? Hold on, my bad. The other one that's on the nose, if I can find it. Oh, wait a minute. Did I not find it? Oh, no, here we go. Oops. And it's obviously this scene right here, which, there's just no denying it. Boom. Okay. And you get to this scene here. Boom, boom, boom. Shit. Right? So the infamous cruciform of Superman coming out the ship, right? But it's also that very conversation, right? You can save Raquel. You can save all of them, right? And then how can you save them, right? Give your, what I'm saying? Like it's the very notion, what I'm saying? Like
again, he's symbolizing you need to sacrifice yourself, which that's what leads it to BVS.
100%. So again, not a coincidence that Zack is choosing this image to be the very thing that follows. You can save all of them, and it's the image of the crucifixion. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And again, who is Superman embodying or representing this whole entire film, and not even just this film? Again, throughout all of his comics and his existence, Yeah. So you get that moment, and then following that, boom, he goes down, he saves Lois, right? Starts kicking ass, right?
Taking names,
kicking ass,
And then we start to see the belief of the Superman.
Yes, right. That's right, because he comes down. A good way to portray that would be when Jesus, when he resurrects, pretty much, and I know that's later, but right. there's different versions of that, that beliefs, where they see him come to life and they're like, oh my God, it's happening, and this is where it's at here in Smallville, who's saving the day, and they're like, oh my God, he's the guy, when they first see him floating even
there.
In that moment though, right, to the soldiers, he was still the enemy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To the soldiers, he was still the enemy. And until he did, and again, so keep this in mind, this is what's kind of cool about this is, even throughout, again, Jesus' miracles and stuff, you would have, keep in mind, he's a Jew, he's Jewish, he's part of the Jewish, people, whatever, or Israel for that matter, at the time that was occupied by Rome. So Rome is the enemy technically, to the people, right? And that's the thing. People thought people expected him to come in the second form, essentially, right? Like he's going to come, he's going to be king, he's going to free us from the oppression of Rome, blah, 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 all that. So Rome was the enemy. But even throughout his existence, in his time of his ministry, you had Roman centurions that heard about what he was doing and went to him to perform miracles, to because so-and-so, a servant of them, whatever, and miracle performed, and all of a sudden the enemy became a servant of God. You know what I mean? Or a believer of Christ. So in the same way, like, not that I say that to say, keep in mind, they shot at Superman. You know what I'm saying? They shot at him, right? When they're at the same time we're shooting Kryptonians, they shot at him too. So they couldn't differentiate him from the other Kryptonians, right? But eventually it took for him to save their lives and perform his miracle, so to speak. And then they come to believe, and this is a good man, or I forget what the general says, or not the general, but the colonel. Like this he's a good man, or something like that, or this man's good, or something like that, he's on our side, something like that, And
he's on our side.
They let him go.
Yeah.
But then eventually to then all meet up. Well, no, then he meets up with Lois and the mother, boom, Hades is the plan, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden everybody's on board. They all believe, at least those who do believe, right? It's not to say everybody believes, but those who have now witnessed him do his thing, now they believe, right? And now is the moment of truth. Like, here we go, time to face Zod, whatever. And this is where I say again, it's there's some symbolism here that kind of gives you the story. But as we said, it flushes out actually in BVS and Zack Snyder's Justice League. But and it's this moment here, where they now go to to Metropolis because Zod does his thing. Now this is important to note, and I can't believe I forgot this, right? After they escape the ship, right, and actually I think, and this is probably even before Zod sends his people to get Kal-El. He asked, or they find out that Krypton is in the blood.
Yeah.
It's in the blood of Superman. So now it's like, all right, then just off him. All I need is his blood. I just need him. You know what I'm saying? I need, you know what I'm saying? So now the mission of Zod is to kill Superman, right?
Yeah.
Like, in order for him to get the codex, right? The people, the DNA of all his people, right? It's essentially in his DNA. It's in his blood, right? That's all he wanted now, right? And then he's like, does he need to be dead, right? So now he's after to kill Superman, right? And again, Superman puts himself in the position to put himself before everybody to essentially be that sacrifice. Now, this is why I say it's kind of crazy because you technically don't see Superman die. But there's a moment that kind of shows the depiction of something of death, but not necessarily death. But I guess you could say, but it's that moment where he's facing the world engine, right? The world engine on his side, right? Like that gravitational and the tentacles, they're tendrils that I'm almost convinced is a precursor to Zack Snyder's idea for a Brainiac, as well as some other images, even that I came across watching the movie again, where I'm like, yo, I think that was that, and it's like just kind of going off the rails, but the scene where when Zod is telling him about what happened when Krypton is destroyed, in the background of the when you see the debris, there's a bunch of weird ships that kind of look like Brainiac's ship with tendrils, dude.
I would have to go check that out.
So just saying, anybody who's interested. But anyways, that sequence
in a lot of depictions, Zod was the one who created Brainiac.
That's right.
So that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, exactly. So again, unfortunately, we didn't get that, with Zach or with what Zach really wanted to do.
Not yet.
or at least not yet. Exactly.
Yeah, not yet.
There's still time. But in that battle, right? Superman's giving his all, but everything just keeps pressing him down, and then finally there's that moment where you think, yo, that took him down, right? And that's that moment of defeat, it would appear, right?
Yeah.
But in glorious fashion, of course, we get this sequence here, right? Where, no, it appears death cannot keep him down. And he gets up, right? But it's that beam of light. And then the ascension, right? It takes up. It's like a depiction of, again, death not being able to keep Christ down, right? Death. There was never even an aspect of death actually conquering Christ, right? Essentially, but it's like in that moment, it's like you thought Clark was defeated, but nope, like this is it. But he was willing to make that sacrifice, right? And even to the point, even if you think about it, like rams himself through that world engine, and you would think, man, maybe he's dead now. but he's not dead, But it's that sequence, this beam of light coming down, and he's there, and then it's the ascension, right? It's like the ascension of Christ, right after. And again, it's a small portrayal, not the actual one that fully encompasses the story. But again, it was just interesting to see how Man of Steel in itself kind of does embody this.
Yeah.
Without, I guess maybe again not knowing if they were going to do BVS or not, or if there was going to be a part 2. And
I think that was always in the cards. Just overall, just because of, I mean, when you see the satellite, the Wayne Tech satellite, you see,
for sure,
LexCorp, the truck, and I'm sure he went in with a plan for.
No. So what I mean is I know he had his plan for the future.
Okay, you're saying,
but the success of Man of Steel, or the not success of Man of Steel, would determine if that future would exist or not. Right, is what I'm thinking. Right, and because I think he knows that, I think he found a way to tell the story in one movie, even though he's not really telling the full story. You get what I'm saying? Like,
make every other movie that comes after an add-on than just, leaving it as a cliffhanger, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, so what I mean is like I said, you get birth, a depiction of, and then everything from the journey that Christ goes on, to a depiction of what could be death, but then ascending, which is in one film, right? That's what I'm trying to get at. And all after the choice of surrendering himself to the idea of giving himself, right? Is all in this film, is what I'm trying to say. Like, in this one film, if we've never gotten BVS, if we never got Zack Snyder's Justice League, you technically do get the full gospel message and symbolisms of it in ways in this one movie, is what I'm trying to get at, is what I'm saying.
Right.
Without actually getting the actual version that we then get in hindsight. Again, like I said, if Man of Steel was the only movie to exist, you still get it, is what I'm saying. Even though you do get a more flushed out version of the actual story, right? Hence why I just said Man of Steel birth, because in my opinion, since we do have all three, Zack knew what he was doing, and not that he's necessarily intended there to be a trilogy that was birth, death, and resurrection, because essentially he still wanted to do a sequel, right? So it was going to be the birth of, we get the birth of Clark in Man of Steel. We get somewhere in the middle his fight with Brainiac, right? That's essentially what he really wanted to do. And then the third installment of what he really wanted to make the trilogy of Superman, to then bring in the League and that all that. But the death would then be there. You know what I mean? Yeah. So the death was supposed to be the end of the trilogy for Superman. And then here comes the Justice League, where then you get the resurrection. Like, that's how it was intended to be initially in his plan, right?
Yeah.
But either way, that's just like a side note. But it's obvious that he had a plan for birth, death, and resurrection for this character. I guess found it interesting that he found a way to manage to put it in this one film. If this is all he got, I guess is what I'm thinking. If this is like all they let him do for whatever reason,
yeah,
he got it out there. but obviously, yeah, like you said, and he definitely obviously did have a bigger plan,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's definitely more fleshed out in the trilogy, and honestly, um, and beyond the trilogy.
Yeah, because it leaves it open, right?
Well, yeah, because you know, I'll put it like this: if in Man of Steel you get birth, in BVS you get the death. With other, again, there's more stuff in BVS that I can show, but I know you're on crunch for time.
Yeah.
And then Zack Snyder's Justice League with the resurrection and things in there too. But it's about what after the resurrection, right? It's not the end of the story. In the same way that the resurrection of Christ then wasn't the end of the story. After that came what? The disciples, the Justice League, that only where in the sense, and now I'm jumping ahead, but and maybe this is a discussion for another time, but so like stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the fact that Darkseid exists and his whole thing is anti-life, which is if Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life, and he's anti-life, it's anti-Christ. And he's coming. And he's from Apocalypse and the Book of Revelation. And you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah. I would love to see like how Zach will put that to like how because he's gonna bridge it, obviously. Like I would love to see the correlation of that. Like
right.
It's that'll be. We are in the right times for it, man. It's exciting. It's exciting to see what
sure.
It's exciting.
No, we're for sure. It's the right time for it for sure. But yeah, man. Again, I don't want to hold you because I know you got to go. I wish we had more time because trust me when I say like, dude.
Yeah, I would like to like break it down and like how we just did today. Like I do like the whole like we pick a day, we do Man of Steel today, then the next time we come on, we focus on break down the whole BVS,
right?
And I would say Ultimate Edition, but we could do the theatrical. I know a lot of people aren't fans of the theatrical. I am. I enjoyed it.
I enjoyed the theatrical.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. I mean, it is nice because we do see the flesh out of it all, obviously in the Ultimate Cut.
Right.
But I was first in line, in the theater, and then obviously we'll do the JL,
Oh no,
Zack Snyder's